Welcome back to another car story. In this series, I share stories while I'm driving around. Today, I am going to tell a story of love, a kind of love that never becomes a relationship, but still somehow manages to break your heart. No betrayal, no cheating, no big dramatic ending, just one person loving someone silently. There is a strange kind of pain in the world that most people never talk about. It's not loud. It doesn't explode like anger or collapse like heartbreak after a betrayal. It's quiet. Slow, patient. It sits somewhere inside the chest and waits. This is the kind of pain that comes from loving someone who was never really yours to love. One-sided love is not dramatic in the way movies show it. There are no huge confrontations, no shouting in the rain. Instead, it grows silently, like a small crack in a wall that slowly spreads until the entire structure begins to weaken. This is the story of a man named Oliver, and how something that started as a simple smile eventually turned into a quiet battle inside his own heart. Oliver was the kind of person people liked immediately. He worked in a retail store in the middle of a busy shopping district, the kind of place where hundreds of people walk in and out every day without remembering the faces behind the counters. But somehow, people remembered Oliver. Maybe it was his attitude. Maybe it was the way he treated everyone with the same respect, whether it was a customer buying something expensive or someone just walking in to browse for a few minutes. Or maybe it was because he looked a little different from everyone else. Oliver had a thick beard and long hair that he usually tied back while working. In a place where most employees looked neat and identical, he stood out. Some people thought it looked unusual for someone working in retail. A few coworkers had even joked about it when he first started. But Oliver never took it personally. He used to laugh and say, "Good. If I look different, people will remember me." And he was right. People did remember him. Outside of work, Oliver tried to live a balanced life. He believed in taking care of his body and mind. Most mornings started with a workout at the gym before his shift. He tried to eat healthy, avoided junk food when he could, and kept a simple routine that gave him a sense of stability. Life wasn't perfect, but he had learned to appreciate small things. Helping someone find what they needed in the store, making a tired customer laugh, finishing a long shift knowing he had done his job well. For Oliver, goodness was simple. He believed in doing good things for people, not because he expected something in return, but because it made the world slightly better. But Oliver hadn't always been this calm and steady. About a year earlier, he had been in a relationship that meant a lot to him. It was a long-distance relationship, the kind that survives mostly through late-night phone calls and messages sent across time zones. For a while, it worked. They talked every day, shared their plans for the future, and tried to believe that one day the distance would disappear. But life doesn't always follow the plans people make. Legal complications and personal circumstances slowly began to close in around them. Neither of them had done anything wrong, but the reality was simple and painful. They couldn't continue. One day, after a long conversation filled with pauses and heavy silence, they decided to end it. There was no anger, no accusations, just two people realizing that love sometimes isn't enough to overcome everything. For a while after that breakup, Oliver felt like someone had quietly removed something important from his life. He didn't fall apart dramatically. Instead, he did what many people do when they don't know how to deal with sadness. He buried himself in routine. He worked more hours. He trained harder at the gym. He kept himself busy. Slowly, the days started to feel normal again. The pain didn't completely disappear, but it faded into the background like a distant memory. Oliver convinced himself that maybe this was how life worked. Some people come into your story, stay for a while, and then leave. You remember them, but you move on. And for a while, he really did move on. Then one ordinary afternoon, during a regular shift at the store, the door opened, and someone walked in who would eventually change everything without even realizing it. She wasn't particularly dramatic when she entered, just another customer looking around the store. She asked a simple question about a product, and Oliver helped her find it. They exchanged a few polite words, maybe a small joke about how confusing the store layout could be. She paid for her items and left. That should have been the end of it. But a few days later, she came back, and then again the following week. Slowly, she became a familiar face. Their conversations were never long at first, just the kind of casual talk that happens between a retail worker and a regular customer. Small jokes, quick smiles, comments about how busy the store was that day. Oliver noticed that she had an easy laugh and a relaxed way of speaking that made people feel comfortable. Over time, their conversations started lasting a little longer. Sometimes she would ask how his day was going. Sometimes he would ask about hers. Nothing about it felt unusual, yet something inside Oliver began to shift without him fully noticing. One day, after several weeks of these friendly interactions, Oliver caught himself thinking about her after she had already left the store. It surprised him. He brushed it off at first, telling himself it was nothing. But the next time she walked through the door and smiled when she saw him, something warm moved through his chest. The human mind is powerful when it comes to building hope out of small moments. A smile becomes a signal. A friendly conversation becomes a possibility. Oliver tried not to overthink it, but the idea quietly began forming in his thoughts that maybe this was how new connections started. Eventually, after enough days had passed and the conversations felt natural, Oliver decided to ask her something simple. One afternoon, when the store wasn't too busy and they were talking near the counter, he said, a little nervously but still smiling, "Hey, would you maybe want to grab coffee sometime?" It wasn't a dramatic question, just a normal invitation. For a moment, she looked slightly surprised. Then she smiled in a gentle, apologetic way and said, "That's really nice of you, but I actually have a boyfriend." The moment was quiet. Not awkward, not tense, just honest. Oliver nodded and smiled back at her. "That's good," he said. "He's lucky." And he meant it. Some people might have tried to push further or pretend the answer didn't matter. But Oliver wasn't that kind of person. To him, respect meant everything. If someone was already committed to someone else, that was the end of the conversation. Or at least, it should have been. But life rarely works in such clean, simple ways. Even after that moment, she kept coming back to the store as a regular customer. She still greeted him with the same friendly smile. They still talked when she came to the counter. Nothing about her behavior suggested anything beyond simple friendliness. And that was exactly the problem. Because Oliver discovered something difficult about human emotions. Just because you know a feeling shouldn't exist doesn't mean it disappears. Weeks passed, then months. One day during a conversation, she casually mentioned that she was looking for a job. Oliver listened carefully. By that point, he had earned a stable position within the retail company and had some influence when it came to hiring recommendations. Helping someone find work was something he genuinely liked doing. So he offered to help. He told her about an opening at the store and guided her through the application process. A few weeks later, she got the job. At first, Oliver felt proud. He had helped someone who needed an opportunity. But what he didn't fully consider was what it would mean to see her every single day instead of once in a while. Now they worked in the same place. They shared shifts. They had lunch breaks in the same staff room. Conversations that once lasted a few minutes at the counter now stretched longer during quiet moments of the day. She remained exactly the same friendly person she had always been, and that was both comforting and painful at the same time. Inside Oliver, something slowly began to grow again. It wasn't the sudden excitement of a new crush. It was deeper and more complicated than that. The human mind has a dangerous habit of building entire worlds out of imagination. Without realizing it, Oliver began picturing what life might be like if circumstances were different. If she wasn't already in a relationship, if they had met earlier, if things had happened another way. These thoughts were never spoken out loud, but they lived quietly in the background of his mind. Despite those feelings, Oliver never crossed any boundaries. If anything, he became more careful. He reminded himself constantly that she had a partner. That respect mattered. That doing the right thing sometimes meant stepping back. But feelings don't follow rules as easily as actions do. Every time she laughed at one of his jokes, it felt meaningful. Every time they talked during a slow shift, it felt natural, almost like something that could have been more under different circumstances. Then came a moment that Oliver would remember for a long time. One afternoon during a break, they were talking casually about travel and relationships. Without really thinking about it, Oliver asked, "Do you have a picture of you and your boyfriend?" She immediately smiled and opened her phone to show him. The photo was simple, the two of them standing close together, clearly happy. In that instant, Oliver felt something inside him crack. He still smiled. He even said something polite about how they looked like a good couple. But internally, it felt like someone had taken a small, fragile part of his heart and dropped it on the floor. That moment forced him to face a truth he had been quietly avoiding. The story in his mind was not real. The person he cared about already had her own life, her own relationship, her own future that didn't include him in that way. After that day, Oliver made a decision. It wasn't dramatic and no one else noticed it happening, but it changed how he moved through his days. He started switching shifts so they wouldn't work together as often. When she came into the store on her days off to shop, he sometimes found a reason to step into the office or check inventory in the storage room. It wasn't because he disliked her. Quite the opposite. He did it because the feelings inside him were becoming too heavy to carry while pretending everything was normal. She never understood why he slowly became more distant. From her perspective, nothing significant had happened. Life continued the same way it always had. But for Oliver, every small act of distance was a quiet attempt to protect himself. One-sided love is a strange experience. The other person hasn't done anything wrong. They haven't betrayed you or hurt you intentionally. Yet the feelings inside your chest can still feel overwhelming. And the hardest part is that the person causing that pain often has no idea it exists. Months passed like that. Oliver continued working, continued helping customers, continued living his routine. On the outside, nothing about his life looked broken. But inside, he had learned something important about love and boundaries. Sometimes the most respectful thing you can do for someone you care about is to step back from the story completely. Not because you stopped caring, but because caring too much in silence can slowly destroy you. In the end, there was no dramatic ending to this story. No confession, no confrontation, no moment where everything suddenly made sense. Just a man who quietly carried a feeling that had nowhere to go. And perhaps that is the true nature of one-sided love. It teaches you how strong emotions can grow even in silence. It shows you how imagination can create entire worlds that reality cannot support. And sometimes, it reminds you that the deepest battles people fight are the ones no one else ever sees. Somewhere in the same busy retail store, customers still walk in and out every day. They see a friendly man with a beard and long hair helping them find what they need. They remember his smile. But none of them know the quiet story that once lived behind it. That was it from me. Hope you liked this story. Please comment below and what you think and drop a like, that helps a lot. And as always, stay inspired.